Today we have Parker York Smith on the Button Up podcast. Excited to dive into your story. How you doing, Parker?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. So, just like myself, you're a Midwest guy, and you have evolved into a very prominent menswear influencer on Instagram and things. And I love to really capture that story. So, uh, I guess what would be your earliest memory of starting to get curious about style?
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, honestly, the origin story that I kind of always stick to is I grew up in going to private school where we had to wear, a polo shirt and some sort of like chino style pant or short in the summertime. Um, but we were allowed to wear sneakers. So that was always sort of the only way that we were able to individualize ourselves. It was kind of like a little mini, looking back, it was kind of like a little status symbol, sort of like whatever shoes you had for school. Typically people would always get a new pair at the beginning of the year, and then you'd get like your basketball shoes or whatever. So those would kind of become like your second half of the year shoe. But my birthday is August 30th, which is kind of right in line with when school would always start. So I just kind of had this unspoken, well, not unspoken, I had this agreement with my mom that my birthday present every year would just be pretty much whatever sneaker that I wanted for school. So that's kind of the original. I've always been a big shoe nerd, sneakers, boots, dress shoes, you name it. And then slowly but surely from there, I ventured into a weird sort of Eminem inspired oversized phase in high school. And then in college, it was very sort of bright colors, polos. I wasn't in a fraternity, but sort of inspired by that sort of college boy kind of thing. And then from there, I moved to LA, and it became a little bit more just kind of what I call like West Coast casual, just very relaxed, but still sort of fashion forward.
Well, I think no one can blame us for the early 2000s and the way that clothes fit then, right?
Oh man, it was so bad. I I wish now that I'm more confident that I had photos, but there are so many times that I just was so glad that there are not photos of a lot of the things that I wore. I mean, like I probably wear like now I usually tend to buy like a 31 or a 32 waist, and I was not definitely not any bigger than I am now then, and I was buying like 36, just like thinking that's what size I needed. It's just so stupid.
Oh, I know. What were so in your early days? You're saying they're sneakers. Like, what are like one or two of the sneakers that were like the ones that really stood out for you?
I mean, definitely, I was always a basketball player, so Jordans were, I mean, I was a big Jordan person. The very first pair of adult sized, expensive, fancy sneakers that I got were the Air Max 97s, the first time that they came out in 97. So that was like, that, I think, from what I can remember, that was one of the very first shoes to cost like 140 or 150 bucks. So it was very crazy because, for one, all of my guys in my grade and our feet had just grown into the adult sizes, so the shoes were going to be more expensive anyway. But then that was also a step up from the other $100 shoes or whatever to pay 150. So most of the other kids in my grades, their parents weren't willing to spend that because they knew they were just going to grow out of them in a year anyway. But because of, like I said, with my birthday, my mom went ahead and got them for me. So I was the only kid in school that had the new Air Maxes. So I was like, that was kind of like, oh wow, like I can use fashion to like really make myself feel confident and interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had a blue pair of Air Force Ones that those I always think of those as like wow, that was my peak sneaker, my sneaker days there.
Yeah, I definitely been through several pairs of Air Force Ones over the years, mainly in high school, as we talked about with that weird phase.
Oh yeah. So you go to college. What do you study in college that leads you out to LA?
I went to school for broadcasting journalism and planned on doing the, either newscaster or sportscaster route. And it was going well, but I did an internship at a local news station and found out a lot of the sort of inner workings of that business. And it's, to be frank, it's kind of an ugly business behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the phrase, if it bleeds, it leads, but it's just like this concept that it's about shock and awe. It's not necessarily about providing real value. So I just bailed on it, to be completely honest. It's one of those industries where you have to work several years making basically minimum wage, sort of proving yourself, so to speak, before you're really considered legitimate. So I decided that I wanted, well, at the time, my stepsister was living in Los Angeles. So I came and visited her when I was a junior in college and just sort of fell in love with the city over a long weekend, and decided from then that I was going to come here. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just knew that I wanted to do it. So I did after college.
What kind of courses do you take in school then around journalism? Is there a lot of like process or like that? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I went to the University of Dayton, and we had a really great TV station and program for broadcasting there. So we would get a lot of on-camera experience. I got a lot of producing experience in terms of like behind the scenes stuff, actually creating different news packages and things like that you would see. At the time, it was sort of, it was digital, but it was, I'm aging myself a little bit, but we were still technically filming everything on tape, and then we would convert the tape to digital. So we had to basically learn how to edit reel to reel, but also then in Avid with like the digital programming that they're using probably still today.
That's great. Nothing like having some of the hard learnings in there.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was great. I really loved it. And I mean, honestly, coming full circle now, just sort of finally in the last, 6 months to a year, trying to get more and more serious and figure out this YouTube world that you guys are so great at, that like it's been invaluable for me to be able to step in and kind of already understand how to edit video and not have to take the time to learn that curve. Now that has been invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. So you land in LA, and then you just figured out from there. What was your first few steps to get off the ground in LA?
Yeah, I mean, I drove out here with a friend of mine. Well, I mean, we drove separately, but we came out here together with the intention of being here. She was basically just like, we had talked about it once or twice that we were interested in moving, and we both graduated from school the same year. And she called me about 3 weeks into the summer and was like, hey, I think she called me on like a Thursday or a Friday, and she said, hey, I know we talked about LA. I'm going to move on Wednesday. So if you're interested, that's what I'm going to do. And I just was like, cool. I didn't have a job. I mean, I was waiting tables as a summer job after college because I knew I wasn't really trying to pursue the news thing yet. So I packed my car and drove. From the moment I left my mom's house, I drove for 30 straight hours and basically passed out at a rest stop about 5 or 6 hours outside of LA. Drove the rest the next day. We got into town. We didn't even have a place to live yet. We looked around at places to live. We actually ended up moving into the very first place that we looked at. I ended up getting another just serving job for a while, and kind of fell into doing acting, trying to pursue that whole scene. So I did that moderately successfully for like 4 years or so.
Yeah, some of those professional headshots.
So many professional headshots. I have like a stack of them that I never used, that like I will never use. And they were so expensive because you got to like pay for the fancy photographer. Because this again was like pre-Instagram, pre-people really, it was only photographers who knew how to take decent photos nowadays, I'll take friends' headshots for them if they need little like quick shots or something, because it's just so much easier for people to know how to use a camera these days. But yeah, professional headshots, all that. I mean, the most thing I was on one episode of American Horror Story a few years ago, and that was about the pinnacle of my acting experience.
That's pretty cool, man. It's a big show.
It was really fun. It was a really interesting experience. I grew up around, my dad was an actor, and so I grew up around it. So that was kind of just the natural thing that I sort of fell into as a backup. And that ended up it was fun and I enjoyed it, but it ultimately revealed itself that I was sort of in it for the wrong reasons. I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't what I was truly passionate about. So I met my now wife, almost 6 years ago, and she sort of saw me struggling with acting. She saw that I wasn't really happy. I didn't really have a whole lot of direction with my career. And she was smart enough to understand that, like, hey, you have this huge passion for clothes, for style. Why don't you start just taking photos of yourself? And you like to write, you learned how to write in college. Just start shooting yourself in these clothes, write about it, talk about why you put that with that, and put it up on the internet and see what happens. It was like very early on in Instagram, sort of. I mean, it wasn't early on in the platform in general, but there really weren't, like, there were only a few people that I was aware of, at least, that were doing what we do then. This was four years ago or something, almost 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast things change with, I guess just the internet in general, any social platform. Like, we hear from a lot of people, I guess like yourself, who have like a pretty big following on Instagram, who say it'd be different if you started now. I mean, do you feel like, did you have a plan when you started, or would you do anything differently now?
To be honest, I did not have a plan. I'm very I don't know the right word, but I'm very creative. I'm not as strong as I would like to be in terms of, planning and analytics and the back end of things. Thankfully, my wife is much more savvy with that kind of stuff, and we sort of work as a team with all of the business. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. But I agree, it would be very difficult now, just because of the fact that not only do you have a lot more people doing it, but you also are at odds with Instagram. I mean, I still, I'm able to use it as my full-time job now, which I'm so lucky and fortunate to be able to do. But it still frustrates me on a regular basis, because I don't know why things aren't going this way, or why it was this way last week and now it's this way this week. And so it would be very tough to just jump in from scratch now. But at the same time, if you feel like you are able to provide value, that's all that really matters. Or if you're able to make yourself happy doing it, that's kind of something that I've really been trying to focus heavy on lately, is just like trying my best not to put all of my personal value in how many likes or views I get on something.
Oh man, yeah, that's a great point, and I would say an uphill battle, especially for Instagram and YouTube and stuff that is very personal, where you're very much the face of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets really tough sometimes, because you just are. I mean, if you want to get technical about it, you are literally able to quantify your value numerically. I mean, it's in terms of how a brand sees you, or the people, clients, and things. Like, when you start to get into the business side of things, you can't just be happy with yourself. You have to kind of be willing to satisfy the needs of the client, or you have to take your numbers into consideration, because if they're not interested in if you're not able to book as many jobs as you would like, it may be because of numbers or something like that. So finding the value in the small things is something that I'm always recommending to people anytime they ask me questions. The first time a brand reaches out to you, celebrate. The first time you get paid, celebrate. Like little things like that, because if you're out there comparing yourself to the biggest names in the industry, which is very easy to do because they're constantly in your face, you're never going to be happy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Well, you started without, too much of a, I guess, goal or a plan, but obviously it merged into something or turned into something that you're doing full time. Was there a point, or do you remember like a certain, I don't know, month or something where you're like, okay, I could actually do this?
I don't remember exactly. I've only been full time for, I guess it's time flies. It's probably been a little over like a year and a half now. But I mean, it was for me. It was when I finally started to realize, like, okay, I have to start getting more serious about this as a business. Like, it still blows my mind on a seemingly daily basis that this is what I get to do as a job, and I have to remind myself that it's not just like fun and creative, and that I do have to be serious about it as a business. So I am constantly reminding myself, like, you know, think about it as a business. The things that you read, like I've been trying to do better about like reading business not textbooks necessarily, but different business books and things where I can learn more about it, because the sooner that people can start to view it as something that is more than just a way to get free clothes, then the sooner the entire industry is going to be respected on a deeper level, and we are going to be able to all work together to make it better, not necessarily be in constant competition with one another. But I feel like I veered off from your question. So yes, there was a time when I was like, wow, okay, I'm making this much money. I've finally been good about, putting it on a spreadsheet, really trying to be as professional about it as possible. And I was kind of like, you know what, I've watched enough episodes of Shark Tank. I've seen enough things in books where people are kind of like, this is the chance for you to take the leap. And I just was like, I'm just going to do it. I moved out here. My life has been a series of leaps. So I feel like I didn't want to stop now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you think that it's interesting that this, like you're kind of saying, there's no standards for like pricing, and some people undervalue themselves. I think actually most like influencers kind of undervalue themselves in terms of like what they charge brands. I mean, how did you figure that out? Like when a brand expresses interest and they say, what's your rate for a post? How do you figure that out?
I don't have a set schematic for that, to be honest. For me, early on, it was kind of like, okay, let's be really honest with myself here. How much time is it going to take me in total to create this photo, to create this blog post, this video, whatever it is? And what's the sort of, I don't want to say bare minimum, but what's the realistic price for that for me? And early on, it was less than it is now, just because I feel like the quality has gone up. But at the same time, it's tough. I don't know, because it is one of those kind of unspoken things that people don't seem to really love talking about. I'm not super comfortable talking about my specific rates with other bloggers and influencers. But you just have to be honest with yourself about what you think your time is really worth. I also, as much as I don't think people should overcharge, because it just gives the whole industry a bad rap. And honestly, like, yes, our job is very time consuming. Our job is very time consuming, I think, is the best way to phrase it. But it also is something that you're able to do pretty much any time. It's not like you can make it work regardless. So I think that the more people are able to understand that by not overvaluing themselves, they are going to kind of provide more value in the long run, because I don't know, I'm rambling and I'm trying to like figure out the right way to answer the question, because it is important to value yourself. That was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, that my wife was on me for a very long time saying, stop taking free stuff. The more you take free stuff, the more people are just going to think that your value is free. Whereas when I started to be a little bit more stern about like, hey, you know what, like, as much as I absolutely love that suit, or as much as I absolutely love that bag, and I deep down, the style hoarder in me is dying to accept it, I know that in the long run, by me denying it, and if more people in our industry would deny it, the quicker we're all going to be able to understand that this can be a career, a full-time job, and not just for the top 5% or whatever it is. I mean, so that was a big thing for me, is just really trying to understand my value as soon as I felt that it was there, and making sure that the businesses that I'm working with understood that value as well. The longest answer for the easiest question.
It's not. I think it's a tough question, man. I mean, and it is really complicated, and it's totally, even though this has been around for a few years, like it's still the Wild West. I think that's why it's really tough, because there are no standards and there's no, people talk about CPMs and stuff, but really there's zero like benchmarks, like from one influencer to the next.
Yeah, there's just no quantifiable evidence, and also like nowadays there's a whole separate industry of people offering to handle it all for you and grow your account and run bots and all these things. And I'm just like, I respect people out there trying to get theirs, so I can't completely knock it as something that I get why people offer it. I've never once paid for a follower. I've never ran a bot on my account. I don't believe in it. I think that it's much smarter to build slowly and build a much stronger base, as opposed to something that is huge and could crumble at any moment, because it's ultimately on really shoddy foundation. But it's about everyone in our industry recognizing their own value and understanding that just because you don't have 50, 100, 200, 500,000 followers, whatever your next benchmark is, doesn't mean that you can't still provide value and still, be within your little niche and be better than the traditional route of these businesses going out and hiring a model and creating an entire photo shoot and spending the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that it costs to do that. Like for me, I also have done a pretty fair amount of modeling, both professional and freelance, and it's been a blessing for me, because I've gotten to sort of understand how crazy that world and sort of archaic a lot of that world really is, where people are overspending for things that people like us can provide, honestly, probably almost a better return for a fraction of the cost. So just really, really seeing yourself as someone who's able to provide value, but figuring out what that value is on a personal level from you specifically, as opposed to just, I have a bunch of followers, so I'm worth, my followers are worth 1 cent a piece. Like I think that's sort of a figure that I've heard other people using. Like if you have 50,000 followers, you should charge $500 a post or whatever. And that's just not how things work, in my opinion.
Well, when you had mentioned about what you do is time intensive, but one of the things that I read that really stuck with me is they said that you as the influencer are assuming the role of creative director, art director, model, photographer. Like you're assuming so many roles, and so to place the value on that, like you're saying, if you're going out on a traditional shoot, the cost to a company for that is exponential compared to an influencer, and trying to find that balance is really what the Wild West that we're sitting in.
Absolutely. I completely agree. But on the flip side of that, I don't feel like you need to go value yourself as 6 people. You need to understand, wow, the creative director and the photographer could very easily be the same person, or you know what I mean? Like, I think too many people go out and say, well, this brand wants me to do all this stuff, so I need to be charging $2,000 for 2 photos or whatever, as opposed to going out and understanding that you can create a great piece of content for a few hundred or whatever, being reasonable about it to where it doesn't give everyone else a bad rap, or you're not putting a bad taste in some young brand's mouth because of the fact that they came and approached you and you just massively overquoted them for something that, you know, you're going to do a great job. Go get what you're worth, but also be fair, be reasonable, and understand that you don't need to go charge what the traditional route would cost, because that's just going to kind of mess the whole thing up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think those are both really good points. So I wonder, given all this, I mean, what would you tell somebody who's just starting from scratch in 2018 and who wants to build an audience on either YouTube or Instagram or both in like the men's lifestyle world?
Sure. The biggest thing right now is, in my opinion, would be differentiation. Like, the more that you can be unique in the space, the quicker you are going to see a return, in my opinion. So if you're able to, you know, take some time, really study the market, figure out what's out there. You know, I'm sort of like modeling my YouTube channel off of pre-existing channels because I don't have the time to really go be inventive, because I have a whole separate other business going with Instagram, and YouTube is sort of just like a beginner thing for me right now. But like, if you're able to keep up a day job or whatever it is, and you're able to go home at night and figure out what type of content is missing, maybe it's, you know, I've been seeing more like heavily photoshopped, really interesting photography that includes a product that I love. You know, I've been seeing really interesting video that is heavily stylized or cinematic or something, that just things that are missing, and go make that your thing. Because ultimately nowadays, if you want to establish something that's real and not just be sort of, you know, an attractive person online, because yes, if you're an attractive person, you'll probably have a little bit of a leg up, because you'll get people that want to come look at you and see how nice you look. But if you're really interested in making this impactful and making it something that you can really help people with, then finding that gap in the market and really just going hard at that is the best way for people to say, oh my God, I just found this guy. He's amazing because he does this or whatever. Because ultimately, you have to get shared vocally. You have to get shared by kids out there who are interested in what you're doing and going to school or going to their job or going wherever, and saying, you guys have to check out this guy. He's awesome. It's just, there's too many people to just happen to have it just happen organically, or it's just going to take a long, long time, and the odds are not in your favor, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, just think about the way that like Fuck Jerry has grown. It's like the number of times that my siblings have sent me his posts early in the days, and it's like, if you do something unique, people will talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a perfect example, because it's just like, you know, and now there are, I'm not big in that world. My wife loves those meme accounts, so like she'll always be showing me something, but he has been copied 100 times over, or 1,000 times over now, so, because he proved a concept that was missing. And sure, there's controversy surrounding someone like him, but at the same time, no press is bad press. Or no, that's not the saying. Or is it?
All press is good press.
Yeah, that works.
Or
Perfect.
bad, even bad press is whatever you want to say. It's all good.
So yeah, I think if you're able to be out there, if people are sharing your content, if they're interested in what you're putting out, because it is unique, it isn't just, I, I don't know. I think it's going to be really tough these days to just show people how you wear a dress shirt with jeans or whatever and have them latch onto it like they would have 4 years ago when I started or whatever. It's a different world. You kind of have to be a little bit more cunning, a little bit more progressive, I guess.
Yeah, totally. So one of the segments that we do is rapid fire questions. So we're going to throw a couple at you, just like 1 or 2 word answers. You ready?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Oxfords or Brogues?
Oxfords.
Morning shower or evening shower?
Morning shower.
Your favorite Bond actor?
Oh, Pierce Brosnan.
Cardio or lifting?
Lifting.
Chinos, jeans, or trousers?
Lately, it's been trousers.
I've noticed. You prefer spring, summer, or fall, winter?
Spring, summer.
Okay, and then if you're getting in the shower and you like want to get pumped up for a day, what song are you playing?
I guess probably like Till I Collapse. I stay true to Eminem. I don't listen to a whole lot of music
choice.
anymore.
Nice. Nice.
I've been listening to Kamikaze for the last 4 days straight. So
I am embarrassed to say I've not even started it yet. I've just like totally fallen off on music. So deep on podcasts and like Kindles Audible books and stuff like that I've become a total like nerd for that kind of stuff as opposed to listening to the new music, which is terrible.
Well, Kamikaze is the first album that he's put out in a while that feels like the old Eminem show stuff or some shady stuff, and so I've been enjoying that one.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. I've seen mixed reviews online, so I'm excited to check it out for myself.
There's no Till I Collapse. That's the problem, though.
Yeah, I don't think there will ever be.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing with us, Parker. I've really enjoyed following your honeymoon the past few months. Congratulations on the wedding.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
You and I are 4 days apart in birthday, so we were
Oh,
close
no
by.
way.
Yeah.
Are you the 26th or the
Yep.
2nd? Oh, nice.
Yeah, 26. So it's been really cool to watch you grow over the past, I think I found it like a year ago or so, and looking forward to what else you have up your sleeve. What's the main place you'd like to point people to follow you?
Anywhere, Instagram or YouTube at Parker York Smith. That's the easiest place to find me. I'm trying my darndest to be better about video. It is, as much as I tell myself I can just knock it out, it is super labor intensive. So I'm trying my best to figure it all out and following in your guys' footsteps. You guys are killing it. I really love watching all of your stuff and staying tuned. I need to be better about being on. That's the thing with Instagram. It's become. This is another tip, sort of a parting tip, is to make sure you don't let it become too much of a job, in the sense that like I don't really get on Instagram leisurely anymore. I sort of just get on there when I need to be on there, and I find myself gravitating towards other things, whereas I used to spend a lot of time on there, exposing myself to the new things, finding out what people are into, stuff like that. So the more you're able to really remember that it is fun, that it is interesting, it can be a really great creative boost, the longer your creativity will last.
I love it. That's a great one. Great place to end. Well, thank you, Parker. And we'll juice those YouTube numbers up. So go check them out over there and find them on Instagram too.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Buttoned Up Podcast, a collaboration between John Shanahan of The Cavalier and Brock McGough of Modest Man. And we will see you next week.